that question of trying to make verses in chapter 9 of John say we have to wait for God's perfect timing, or that God delays healing. In the end of chapter 8, Jesus had basically made himself invisible. The crowd was ready to stone him. They picked up the stones, and it says Jesus hid himself. And he walked through the crowd, and they didn't see him, and he left. So this is the next thing that happens. Jesus was passing by a man which was blind from his birth. And the disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did this sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, Neither hath this man sinned nor his parents, but the works of God should be made manifest in him. I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night comes when no man can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. And when he spoke, he spat on the ground, made of the spittle, and he anointed the man's eyes that was blind with the mud, and said to him, Go wash in the pool of Siloam. He went his way and therefore washed and came back seeing. This passage of verses has been used a lot to accuse God of all kinds of things. Jesus just avoided getting stoned in the temple, but he stopped to minister to this man. Now, this man didn't call out for Jesus. He didn't have faith in Jesus. This man was begging because he was blind. He was begging for money. And his disciples pointed him out to Jesus and asked whose sin it was. Jesus answered, Neither this man sinned nor his parents. You could have put a period there. Some passages put a colon, some put a comma. But that was the end of the sentence. Neither him nor his parents sinned. If he was born blind, he couldn't have sinned. And his parents didn't sin so that their son was born blind. We know that, yes, the original sin did cause sickness in the world. But there's no sin that caused this man to be blind. Jesus did tell the man who was healed at the pool of Bethesda, back in John 5, that he should sin no more lest a worse thing come unto them, implying that the man's sin could allow for paralysis or something worse to come back on him. So sickness can be linked to sin, but it's not always the case. And a misrepresentation of this has caused many people to reject the truths of healing. They know they are great sinners, or that they're not great sinners, and therefore feel condemnation when someone tries to tell them they're sick because of some individual sin. They know that condemnation isn't from the Lord and mistakenly throw the healing out with the condemnation. We need to be more thorough in our presentation of healing. Always try to make sure that your words are understood when you speak about this. Yes, some people do have cancer because of certain sins in their body. But it's not a punishment. Not everybody who has cancer had those sins, and not everybody who has that sin gets cancer. You can't tie that into it, just like you can't tie smoking into it, because they've proved that there are some people who smoke their whole life and never get cancer, whereas others have never smoked and get the same kind of cancer. So to try to tie it into a certain sin is a mistake. So we don't do that. Now, that disciples had asked that question that people do now still. What did we do wrong? She didn't drink alcohol. She didn't smoke. Well, it's because there's sin and sickness in the world. But it wasn't caused by you or the parents that we know of. So this has led many people to reinterpret what Jesus says after that period or colon or comma, which is the balance of verse 3. This man has blindness is basically what Jesus is saying. He says that the works of God should be made manifest in him. So we show that that is what he's here for. He's here to heal, just like we are. When we encounter somebody that has an ailment that needs healed, we need to do that. Verse 4, Jesus continued, I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. When night cometh, when no man can work, as long as I'm in the world, I'm the light of the world. Okay, so Jesus healed people until he was put on the cross and died and rose again. We don't have any record of him healing anybody in between the time he ascended and the time of the cross. And then he left this earth, he ascended, and then after the Holy Spirit came upon the disciples, day of Pentecost, we then see miracles happen again, but they happen through the work of the disciples. So if it was true for Jesus that he must work the works of him who sent him, that's what our work is too. We're supposed to do the works. Now, why did he put clay on his eyes? I don't know. I assume that it was something to do with how he was instructed to heal the man from the Holy Spirit. It doesn't tell us. I've heard all kinds of stories about making clay out of the ground and it would suck out parasites or something out of his eyes, but that's all hearsay. It's not anything that you can prove or show. Why did he tell him to go wash in the pool of Siloam? I don't know. I don't know how long it would take for a blind man. They say it's about a half a day journey to the pool of Siloam, and he had to come back. There was a perfectly good pool just down the street from the temple they were in, but he didn't send them to that one. He sent them to the pool of Siloam. So this whole chapter goes on about all the trouble that this guy got into, how his parents had to basically deny him because otherwise they would have been excommunicated from the temple. They would have been kicked out of their town, basically. They wouldn't have been able to do business with any of the other Jews as long as they were excommunicated from the temple. So it's a long chapter, but the trying to tie this into God's perfect timing, that this guy was made blind so that Jesus could walk by and heal him, that's not what it's saying. It's saying that Jesus was here to heal people. Now, a lot of people try to say that God gave him that. Well, that was changed clear back in Deuteronomy 28. It tells you how you get sickness, poverty, and oppression. They're not blessings in disguise. They are punishments. This blindness was not something from God. It was from a fallen world. Jesus also taught that a house divided against itself cannot stand. That's Matthew 12, Mark 3, Luke 11. If God had made this man blind, then Jesus would have been going against the judgment of God to make him well. Likewise, if we really believe God makes people sick as a blessing, then we certainly shouldn't be praying for their healing. We probably shouldn't even go to the doctor because God punished it. If sickness was a blessing, then we should be laying hands on people and blessing them with blindness or cancer. That doesn't make sense. So to tie that into it, this man was blind. He was born blind. It was not the fault of him. It was not the fault of his parents. And the reason he got healed that day was because Jesus heard him. Actually, Jesus didn't even hear him begging. The disciples heard him begging, pointed him out to Jesus, and asked the question, who sinned? Jesus said neither one sinned. And so I'm going to go heal this guy because that's my job. And that's what our job is too. So trying to tie that into the perfect timing of somebody's healing, that's a really big stretch, and it's not biblical. Hope that answered the question, probably a little bit long. Have yourself a great day.